In 1992, a train from Quetta to Lahore tried to stop at an unscheduled station, a station that did not exist on any record. When the train left, 7 passengers were missing, and 3 others had a strange ancient symbol stained on their clothes. The incident began with routine silence. The 13-up Quetta Express was running late by nearly 40 minutes as it cut through the Balochistan desert. The air was still, the wind heavy with dust. Most passengers were asleep. The driver, Muhammad Hanif, later said he saw something ahead on the tracks, dim yellow lights glowing in the fog. They looked like the signal lamps of an old railway station, the kind used decades ago. He slowed the train, thinking it might be an emergency signal. The control tower in Sibi had no record of any station at that location. When they checked the logs later, the signal systems showed no entry, no light source, and no indication that a stop had been ordered. But on that night, Hanif swore he saw a signboard, painted black with white Urdu script. It read, "Chandpur Halt." No one on the railway map had ever heard of Chandpur Halt. The train came to a stop. A few passengers woke, confused by the hiss of brakes and the sudden quiet. Outside, the platform was dimly lit by 2 flickering lamps. A thin fog clung to the tracks. Hanif opened the window of the engine cabin, calling out for the signalman, but there was no reply. Only the sound of distant wind. The conductor, Imran Shah, walked along the platform with a lantern. He said he saw faint shapes moving, people in old-style uniforms like railway staff from the 1940s. Their coats were long, their caps round and stiff. None of them spoke. When he looked again, they were gone. At 2:13 a.m., the driver restarted the engine. The train rolled forward slowly, but when it reached the next scheduled stop at Kanawal, the staff noticed 7 names missing from the passenger manifest. Their seats were empty, their luggage untouched. 3 other passengers were found unconscious, their shirts marked with a dark red symbol, a circle with 3 vertical lines running through it as if painted in rust. Railway authorities tried to dismiss the event as confusion during a night halt, but internal reports, which surfaced years later, said the stop was real. The station's architecture, described by crew members, matched the colonial design of British-era halts decommissioned after partition. One of the 3 survivors, a retired schoolteacher named Abdul Rauf, described waking up to whispers inside the carriage. He said the voices spoke in a mix of languages, Urdu, Persian, and something older, unfamiliar. The whispers grew louder just before the train stopped. He thought it was a dream until he saw the shadow of a man standing outside the window, watching. When he opened his eyes again, the train was moving, and the platform had vanished. The Railway Ministry never made a public statement, but an internal memo, dated April 1992, warned all Quetta-Lahore conductors to ignore unauthorized halts between Mach and Rory Junction. The name, Chandpur Halt, appeared once, then was blacked out with ink. Local villagers living near the desert route claimed they sometimes heard train horns at night when no train was scheduled. Some said they saw the faint outline of a station that vanished by morning. They called it the Ghost Stop, a relic from before partition, when railways carried both soldiers and prisoners across the desert. Years later, an investigator from Karachi, Shahid Faruqi, tried to trace the 7 missing passengers. None were found. Their national ID records were still active until 2001, then silently deactivated. No death certificates were ever issued. And the symbol found on the passengers' shirts? It matched a mark carved into an old railway tunnel near Mach. British records from 1897 referred to it as the Seal of the Brotherhood of Chandpur, a secret unit of colonial officers who vanished during a riot in the late 19th century. Part 1 ends here, with a train that stopped at a station erased from history, 7 souls who never returned, and a symbol that connected 1992 to something buried a century before. By 1994, 2 years after the Chandpur Halt incident, The railway ministry had buried every trace of it. The official narrative stated that no unscheduled stop occurred on the Quetta-Lahore route. But not everyone believed that report. A freelance investigator from Karachi, Shahid Farooqi, came across the case while studying train accidents for a newspaper feature. Hidden in the archives of the Sibi Railway Division, he found a report filed by a junior officer named Tariq Mahmood. The file was marked Classified Internal Review. Inside, it described the missing passengers and contained sketches of the strange red symbol found on their clothes. Tariq had written a note in the margins. Symbol matches pre-partition British insignia. Possible connection to 1897 disappearance, Chandpur tunnel workers. Shahid became obsessed. He started tracing old railway maps. The earliest he found, from 1901, showed a small unnamed station between Mach and Rory. It was erased in later maps. But when he placed a ruler across both locations, he noticed a faint pencil mark. Someone had written Chandpur H in faded ink. When he contacted retired engineers, most refused to speak. One, an old British man named Thomas Lister, who had worked in Quetta during the 1940s, agreed to meet him. Lister lived in Karachi now, fragile and nearly blind. He told Shahid something that changed the course of the investigation. Chandpur was never a real station, Lister said quietly. It was a camp. During the rebellion of 1897, a secret railway unit operated there. They were transporting something from the Bolan Caves. The British sealed the camp after an accident. 43 men vanished overnight. When Shahid asked what they had been transporting, Lister went silent. Then he whispered, "Artifacts, marked with the same symbol." Shahid spent months collecting evidence. He interviewed Abdul Rauf, the retired schoolteacher, the only living witness of the 1992 event. Rauf's hands still shook when he spoke. He said the voices on that night called out names that didn't belong to anyone on the train. And one of the names was Colonel Patterson, the same name Lister had mentioned from 1897. By late 1994, Shahid's notes filled a box. He documented everything: the coordinates, the missing IDs, even sound recordings of local villagers who claimed to hear train horns echoing at midnight. One farmer said he saw passengers walking on the tracks days after the incident, like shadows with no sound. When Shahid filed his report to the Karachi Herald, the editor refused to publish it. 2 days later, Shahid's home was broken into. Only his tapes and notebooks were taken. He filed a police complaint, but nothing came of it. Soon after, he received a letter with no return address. It contained a single sheet of yellow paper, printed with the railway emblem. Below it, one sentence was typed: Chandpur Halt does not exist. Do not make it exist again. Still, Shahid couldn't let go. He decided to travel the same route himself. In December 1995, he boarded the Quetta Express, carrying a small recorder and a map he had reconstructed from old blueprints. Somewhere between Mach and Rory, the train slowed unexpectedly. There was no fog this time. No lights, only silence and a faint metallic hum. When he looked out the window, Shahid swore he saw a dark outline of a platform. And just for a second before the train picked up speed again, he saw a figure on that platform wearing a colonial-era cap, staring directly at him. That night, Shahid called a friend in Karachi. His voice was shaking. He said, "It's still there. The station exists, but not in this time." It was the last call he ever made. Shahid Farooqi vanished during his return trip from Lahore. His seat was found empty, his ticket unscanned, and his name quietly removed from the passenger record. Part 2 ends here, with a vanished investigator, a forbidden archive, and a single name echoing through history: Chandpur Halt. The storm raged through the night. By dawn, the village was unrecognizable. Trees were uprooted, homes collapsed, and the temple courtyard was flooded. But the shrine of the blue flame still stood untouched, its fire burning with unnatural calm. Arjun woke to the sound of bells. Not the temple bells, but faint metallic rings echoing from the mountains. He stepped outside, drenched in mist, and saw footprints in the mud leading uphill. They weren't human. The prints were wide and clawed, like those of a beast. He followed them. The path wound through dense fog, each step heavier than the last. The mountain seemed alive, breathing, whispering. Strange markings appeared on rocks, glowing faintly in blue. It was the same symbol he had seen carved inside the shrine. At the peak, the air turned cold. There stood a stone door, half buried in the cliffside, sealed with iron chains. A voice rose behind him. "It opens only for those who have heard the mountain's call." It was a monk, the same man who had disappeared from the temple months ago. His robes were tattered, his eyes pale. He carried a wooden staff carved with ancient runes. Arjun stepped back. "What's inside?" The monk smiled faintly. "The source of the flame, the truth of our faith, and the reason it was hidden." He struck the ground with his staff. The earth trembled. The chains fell away. The stone door slid open, releasing a rush of cold air that smelled of ash and old blood. Inside, torches lit themselves, revealing walls covered in ancient murals. They showed scenes of sacrifice, not worship. Men offering their lives to a massive figure made of light and shadow. The blue flame in its chest burned like a heart. Arjun stared in horror. "This isn't a god," he whispered. "It's something else." The monk's expression hardened. It was never a god. It was a gate. Before Arjun could move, the monk raised his staff. The flame symbol on the floor began to glow. The air thickened. And then he heard it, the same chant the pilgrims had whispered on the mountain trail. As the walls shook and the flame surged upward, the monk's voice blended with the storm. "The mountain remembers its children." As Ahmed stepped through the ancient gate, the air turned heavy. The tunnel beyond was narrow, lined with damp walls that pulsed faintly as if alive. His flashlight flickered, revealing strange markings etched into the stone. Each symbol matched the pendant worn by the missing station master. A faint humming echoed deeper within. He followed it until he reached a vast underground chamber. There, in the dim blue glow, stood the train, the same one from 1992, its metal corroded, its windows blackened. Inside, shadows moved. He saw the faces of the missing passengers, frozen mid-motion, their eyes open but lifeless as if trapped between moments. Suddenly, the station master appeared beside him, whispering, "They never left. Time never moved for them." Ahmed turned to run, but the gate behind him began closing. The walls vibrated. The ground split, swallowing the platform and the train into darkness. When rescuers arrived the next day, they found nothing. No tunnel, no train, no Ahmed. Only a single train ticket lay on the ground, its date reading 1992. And since that day, every few years, locals near the old railway claim to hear a train whistle in the dead of night. Even though the tracks have long been abandoned,